The throne room stretched out like a cathedral made of living crystal. Light bounced off every surface, creating rainbows that danced across the polished floor. Commander Jiwon Park stood at attention, her hands clasped behind her back, trying not to show how impressed she was by the sight. Beside her, Ambassador Minho Kong adjusted his collar for the third time. Lieutenant Yuna Choi remained perfectly still, her eyes scanning every corner of the massive chamber. They had traveled 3 months through space to reach this place. The Velkari Empire controlled more star systems than humanity had even discovered. Their ships were works of art and terror combined. Their warriors were legends across the galaxy. And their queen had finally agreed to meet with representatives from Earth. Queen Ixvara entered the throne room like a storm given form. She stood over 7 feet tall, her skin the color of polished obsidian. Silver veins ran across her arms and face, glowing faintly with inner light. She wore armor that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced, decorated with symbols of countless victories. Behind her came the Crimson Blades, her elite guard. Each warrior looked like they could tear a tank apart with their bare hands. The queen's eyes locked onto the human delegation. Her gaze moved from Minho to Yuna to Jiwon, studying them like insects under glass. A smile crossed her face, but it held no warmth, only amusement. "So," Ixvara said, her voice echoing through the chamber, "these are the humans. I expected you to be taller." Minho stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, we are honored by this audience. Humanity seeks to join the Galactic Coalition and prove ourselves worthy allies." The Queen laughed. The sound was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Several of the Crimson Blades joined in, their laughter filling the throne room. "Worthy?" Ixvara descended from her throne, each step deliberate. "Look at yourselves. You are tiny, fragile. Your skin bruises from the lightest touch. Your bones break from simple falls." She circled Jiwon slowly, like a predator examining prey. "You have no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no armored hide. You must wear artificial protection just to survive basic combat." Jiwon kept her face neutral, but her jaw tightened slightly. Yuna noticed and made a mental note to commend her commander's restraint later. Minho cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, humanity has survived countless wars on our home planet. We have faced extinction and overcome it. Our military forces are well trained and disciplined. We can contribute to the coalition's efforts." "Military forces?" The Queen stopped in front of Jiwon, looking down at her. "You call yourselves warriors?" Without warning, Ixvara reached out and grabbed a steel support beam that decorated the edge of the throne platform. The metal was as thick as a human arm. She squeezed, and the steel crumpled like paper in her grip. The screech of tortured metal filled the room. "This is strength," she declared, dropping the twisted metal. It hit the floor with a heavy clang. "This is what a warrior possesses." She gestured to one of her crimson blades. "Demonstrate." The warrior stepped forward into the center of the throne room. He moved with fluid grace despite his massive size. In one smooth motion, he drew his sword and began a combat demonstration. The blade whistled through the air, cutting patterns too fast for human eyes to fully track. He moved from stance to stance, each strike powerful enough to shatter stone. The marble floor cracked under his feet as he leaped and spun. He finished by bringing his sword down in an overhead strike that split one of the floor tiles in half. The demonstration lasted less than a minute, but it showed centuries of martial tradition and raw physical power. The Crimson Blade sheathed his weapon and returned to his position without even breathing hard. "That," Ixvara said, "is what we expect from warriors. Can your species do anything remotely comparable?" Minho looked uncomfortable. He glanced at Jiwon, who gave the smallest shake of her head. Now was not the time for demonstrations. They were guests here, and any show of force could be seen as a threat. "We have different methods," Minho said carefully. "Human warfare relies on tactics, technology, and teamwork rather than individual strength." The queen returned to her throne and sat down, her posture radiating bored disappointment. Tactics, technology, teamwork. She repeated the words like they tasted bad. Excuses for weakness. She leaned forward, her silver veins glowing brighter. The Galactic Coalition does not need the weak. We face threats you cannot imagine. The Scourge devours entire worlds. They adapt to every weapon we use. They multiply faster than we can kill them. Only the strong survive against such enemies. Then let us prove our strength, Ji-Wan spoke for the first time, her voice calm and clear. The throne room fell silent. Even the Crimson Blades seemed surprised that the human commander had spoken without being addressed. Ixavara's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "Let us prove our strength," Ji-Wan repeated, meeting the Queen's gaze without flinching. "Give humanity a chance to show what we can do. Send us into battle alongside your forces. If we fail, you lose nothing. But if we succeed, you gain allies who can help turn the tide against the Scourge." The Queen studied Ji-Wan for a long moment. Something flickered in her expression. Curiosity, perhaps, or intrigue. "You would volunteer to fight the Scourge?" Ixavara asked. "Knowing that they have destroyed species far stronger than yours?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because that's what warriors do," Ji-Wan said simply. "We face impossible odds. We protect others. We refuse to quit, no matter how strong the enemy." Ixavara stood again, walking down to stand directly in front of Ji-Wan. The height difference was dramatic, but Ji-Wan didn't back away. "Very well," the Queen said softly. "I accept your offer. I will assign a human contingent to my personal fleet. You will fight in the campaign to push back the Scourge from the Keswick system. Bring your best warriors. Bring your tactics and technology and teamwork." She smiled again, and this time there was cruelty in it. "I will enjoy watching you fragile things break. Perhaps some of you will survive long enough to learn what real warfare means." Minho looked like he wanted to object, but Ji-Wan spoke first. "We accept your terms, Your Majesty. How many warriors can we bring? How many do you have available?" "We can deploy a company. 50 soldiers fully equipped." The Crimson Blades laughed again. 50 soldiers seemed like nothing to them. The Queen's fleet alone carried 10,000 warriors. 50, Ixavara repeated, shaking her head. "Bring them all. You will need every soldier you can find." She turned away, dismissing them with a wave. "General Velthar will provide you with the briefing information. The campaign begins in 2 weeks. I suggest you use that time to prepare your farewells." As the human delegation was escorted out of the throne room, Yuna leaned close to Ji-Wan. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. Ji-Wan's expression was unreadable. "She thinks we're weak. She thinks we'll fail. That gives us an advantage." "What advantage?" "She won't see us coming." Behind them, Queen Ixavara watched the humans leave. One of her advisors approached her throne. "Your Majesty, was it wise to accept their offer? They will surely die in the first engagement." Ixavara waved a hand dismissively. "Let them try. When they fail, it will serve as a lesson to other weak species who think they can stand among true warriors. And if by some miracle they survive—" She paused, remembering the look in Commander Ji-Wan's eyes. "Well, that would be interesting indeed." The advisor bowed and retreated. The Queen sat alone on her throne, surrounded by crystal and light, thinking about the small, fragile humans who had just volunteered to walk into hell itself. She didn't know it yet, but she had just made the biggest mistake of her long life. She had underestimated humanity. The staging ground on Keswick's 4 looked like organized chaos. 10,000 coalition warriors from a dozen different species prepared for the coming battle. Massive tents housed equipment and supplies. Training grounds echoed with the sounds of combat drills. Ships came and went constantly, bringing reinforcements and materials. In the far corner of the base, isolated from the main forces, 50 human soldiers set up their camp. They had been given the worst location, near the waste recyclers and far from the command center. Their equipment allocation had been minimal. Their food rations were barely adequate. The message was clear. Nobody expected them to matter. Commander Jiwon walked through the human camp, checking on her people. They worked efficiently despite the poor conditions. Tents went up in neat rows. Weapons were cleaned and checked. Supplies were organized and inventoried. Nobody complained. Lieutenant Yuna approached with a data pad. "Commander, I've reviewed the battle assignments. We're being sent to the southern sector." "And?" "It's the most dangerous position. Heavy scourge presence, difficult terrain, minimal support. Command is putting us where they expect the highest casualties." Jiwon nodded. She had expected as much. "Have you told the others?" "Not yet. Wanted your input first." "Tell them the truth. They deserve to know what we're walking into." Jiwon looked around at her soldiers. They came from different backgrounds, different countries, different military branches. But here, they were one unit. "They can handle it." Across the camp, Sergeant Hajun Lee supervised weapons training. He was a compact man with steady hands and an expert's knowledge of explosives. Right now, he was showing Private Taiyang Nam how to properly maintain a plasma rifle. "The barrel needs cleaning every 50 shots, Hajun explained. "These weapons are more powerful than anything we used on Earth, but they're also more finicky. Treat them right, they'll save your life." Taiyang nodded, focusing intently on the lesson. He was young, barely 22, but he had qualified as both a combat medic and close-quarters specialist. His hands were quick and precise as he disassembled the rifle. Up on the training grounds observation tower, Corporal Sora Kim lay prone with her sniper rifle. She tracked targets across the base, practicing distance calculations and wind adjustments. The scope on her rifle was custom-made, incorporating both human and alien technology. She had personally calibrated it until it felt like an extension of her own body. A shadow fell across her position. Sora looked up to see a Velkari warrior standing over her. He was massive, even by his species' standards, with battle scars crisscrossing his obsidian skin. "Human," he said, his voice deep and rumbling. "You play with toys while real warriors prepare." Sora sat up slowly, setting her rifle aside carefully. "Can I help you?" "I am Krenox of the Crimson Blades. I have fought in 50 battles. I have killed thousands of enemies." He crossed his arms, muscles bulging. "I hear your kind claims to be warriors. I wish to test this claim." Word spread quickly. Within minutes, a crowd gathered around the training ground. Coalition soldiers from various species came to watch, eager for entertainment. The humans formed their own group, tense and ready. Krenox stood in the center of the training ring, flexing his clawed hands. "Send your best fighter," he called out. "Let us see what humanity can do." Jiwon started to step forward, but Taeyang moved faster. The young medic entered the ring, looking impossibly small compared to the Velkari warrior. "I'll fight," Taeyang said quietly. Krenox laughed, and the crowd joined in. "A child? They send a child?" "I'm old enough," Taeyang replied. He removed his jacket and stretched, loosening his muscles. The rules were simple. Fight until one surrendered or could not continue. No weapons, no enhancements. Just skill against skill. Krenox attacked first, moving with surprising speed for his size. His clawed hand swept toward Taeyang's head fast enough to decapitate if it connected. Taeyang wasn't there. He had already moved, ducking under the strike and rolling to the side. The Velkari's claws cut only air. The crowd murmured. "Lucky dodge," they thought. Krenox charged, using his superior strength and reach. He threw a combination of strikes, each one powerful enough to shatter bone. Taiyang evaded them all, moving with fluid precision. He never went where Kren Ox expected. He used the Velkari's own momentum against him, making the larger fighter overextend and lose balance. This wasn't luck. This was training. Taiyang waited for his opening. When Kren Ox threw a wild haymaker, the human stepped inside the warrior's guard. He struck twice, fast and precise, first to the nerve cluster on Kren Ox's inner arm, momentarily numbing it, second to the pressure point behind the knee, buckling the leg. Kren Ox stumbled, surprised. No opponent had ever gotten past his natural defenses so easily. The fight continued for 3 minutes. Kren Ox was stronger, tougher, and had natural weapons. But Taiyang fought smarter. He used the environment, using the training ring's boundaries to limit the Velkari's movement. He targeted weak points instead of trying to match strength against strength. He made Kren Ox chase him, wearing down the bigger fighter's stamina. When Kren Ox made a desperate lunge, Taiyang was ready. He sidestepped, grabbed the extended arm, and used a joint lock to force the Velkari face down onto the training mat. Before Kren Ox could recover, Taiyang had his arm twisted behind his back at an angle that would dislocate the shoulder if he resisted. "Submit," Taiyang said, not unkindly, "or I'll have to hurt you." The crowd had gone completely silent. For a long moment, Kren Ox struggled against the hold. Then, slowly, he tapped the mat 3 times with his free hand. Taiyang released him immediately and stepped back, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Kren Ox took it and pulled himself up. "You fight with honor," the Velkari said, rubbing his shoulder. "Strange honor, but honor nonetheless." "You're strong," Taiyang replied, "but strength isn't everything." As the crowd dispersed, the coalition warriors looked at the humans with new eyes. Not quite respect, not yet, but uncertainty. Perhaps these small creatures were not as helpless as they appeared. General Velthar watched the whole thing from his command post via security footage. He was the Queen's top military commander, a veteran of countless campaigns. He rewound the fight and watched it again, analyzing Taiyang's technique. "Interesting," he muttered. Then he deleted the footage and filed his report. "Human defeated in training exercise," it read. "No significant combat capability demonstrated." The Queen would see what she expected to see. That was safer for everyone. Later that night, Jiwan gathered her people for a briefing. They sat in their mess tent, eating rations and listening as she explained their assignment. "The southern sector is bad," she said bluntly. "Heavy resistance, poor terrain, minimal support. Command expects us to fail." "So what else is new?" Hajun said with a grim smile. "We're going to show them what humans can actually do," Jiwan continued. "We fight smart. We fight together. We use every advantage we have. Speed, tactics, adaptability. These are our weapons." Yuna pulled up a tactical map. "I've analyzed the terrain. There are ways to use it to our advantage. Choke points, high ground, natural cover. If we position ourselves correctly, we can hold against superior numbers." Sora studied the map intently. "I'll need elevated positions for overwatch. Can we get there ahead of the main assault?" "I'll make it happen," Jiwan promised. They planned late into the night, going over every detail. Each soldier knew their role, their fallback positions, their rally points. They prepared for every scenario they could imagine. In the distance, coalition forces partied, confident in their upcoming victory. The aliens had never lost to the Scourge when they committed this many warriors. This would be another triumph to add to their long history. But the humans didn't party. They prepared. Because they knew something the coalition had forgotten. Wars weren't won by the strongest warriors. They were won by the ones who refused to quit, who adapted faster than the enemy, who turned disadvantages into advantages. The humans had been underestimated their entire existence. They had learned to use that. Tomorrow, when the battle began, The galaxy would start to learn what that meant. Taiyang sat alone after the briefing, cleaning his medical supplies. Krenox found him there. "Why did you spare me?" the Velkari asked. "You could have broken my arm." "Because we're on the same side," Taiyang said simply. "We'll need every warrior we have for what's coming." Krenox nodded slowly. "I will fight beside you tomorrow, human. And I will not forget this lesson." After he left, Yuna sat down next to Taiyang. "You made an impression today. Just did what I was trained to do." "No," she said. "You showed them we're not victims. That matters." Taiyang looked out at the alien camp, where warriors 3 times his size prepared for battle. "Let's hope it matters enough." Dawn broke over the scorched canyons like a wound opening in the sky. Red light spilled across the broken landscape, casting long shadows across razor-sharp rocks and deep crevasses. The coalition forces assembled in formation. 50,000 strong. Their armor gleamed, their weapons hummed with power. They sang war songs that echoed off the canyon walls. The human contingent stood apart, checking equipment one final time. They didn't sing, they didn't boast, they simply prepared. Commander Jiwan walked down the line of her soldiers, making eye contact with each one. No speeches, no inspirational words, just a nod of recognition. They knew what to do. Lieutenant Yuna confirmed communications were working. Sergeant Ha-jun verified demolition charges. Corporal Sora tested her rifle's scope. Private Taiyang ensured medical kits were fully stocked. Every detail mattered. General Velthar's voice boomed across the command channel. "All units advance. Drive the Scourge back to their hive. Show no mercy. Victory for the coalition!" The army surged forward like a tide of metal and fury. The humans moved with them, staying in tight formation as they entered the canyon system. The Scourge met them a mile in. They came like a nightmare flood. Thousands of chittering insectoid creatures poured from cave openings and tunnel mouths. Each one stood 6 feet tall with 4 razor-sharp limbs and mandibles that dripped acid. Their exoskeletons were black as oil, and they moved with terrifying coordination. The coalition forces crashed into them like a hammer. Velkari warriors tore through Scourge bodies with their bare hands. Other species used advanced weapons, cutting down enemies by the dozens. The battle was glorious, honorable, and exactly what the coalition expected. The southern sector was different. The human position was exposed and outnumbered from the start. Scourge emerged from everywhere, ahead, to the sides, even dropping from the canyon walls above. A conventional force would have been overrun in minutes, but the humans didn't fight conventionally. "Contact front, 200 meters, Sora's voice came through calm and clear. She was positioned on a high ridge with 2 other snipers. Her rifle cracked, and a Scourge commander's head exploded. "Targeting priority enemies." She fired again, and again. Each shot killed a Scourge that was directing others, disrupting their coordination. The other snipers followed her lead, creating gaps in the enemy formation. "Ha-jun, collapse the left approach," Jiwan ordered. The sergeant activated preset charges buried in the canyon wall. The explosion brought tons of rock crashing down, sealing off one avenue of attack. Now the Scourge could only come from 3 directions instead of 4. "Yuna, shift Team 2 to support the center. Moving now." The lieutenant coordinated the repositioning smoothly. The humans moved like water, flowing to where they were needed most. The Scourge hit their defensive line. Instead of meeting them head-on, the humans used overlapping fields of fire. Every soldier covered 2 others. When one group reloaded, another kept firing. The Scourge couldn't find gaps in their defense. Taiyang fought on the front line, his rifle in one hand and medical supplies in the other. When a soldier went down, he was there in seconds, applying pressure to wounds while still shooting at enemies. He dragged a wounded alien soldier, a Kethran warrior, back to cover while firing behind him. "Stay down," Taiyang told the alien. "You'll be okay. He worked quickly, sealing a nasty cut across the warrior's chest. The Kethran stared at him in shock. Humans were supposed to be fragile, but this one was saving his life while surrounded by enemies. The battle raged for 3 hours. The Scourge adapted, trying new tactics. They attempted to tunnel underneath the human positions. Yuna had predicted this and positioned seismic sensors to detect digging. Hajun collapsed the tunnels before they could emerge. They tried aerial attacks, with flying variants diving from above. Sora and her sniper team picked them off before they could reach their targets. They tried overwhelming numbers, sending wave after wave. The humans fell back to secondary positions, using the terrain to create kill zones. Every retreat was planned. Every fallback position prepared. Around noon, the situation became critical. A Velkari battalion 3 kilometers north became surrounded. 300 warriors faced annihilation from 10,000 Scourge. General Velthar ordered all units to hold position. Losing 1 battalion was acceptable if it meant maintaining the line elsewhere. Jiwan heard the order and ignored it. All units, prepare for rapid deployment. We're going to pull them out. Commander, Yuna said quietly, we'll be going against orders, and we'll be outnumbered 200 to 1. I know. Jiwan checked her weapon. But we're not leaving Allied forces to die when we can help them. She led her 50 soldiers on a forced march that should have been impossible. They covered 3 kilometers of rough terrain in 20 minutes, arriving at the battle from an unexpected angle. The Velkari were fighting desperately, surrounded on all sides. Their casualties were mounting. They prepared to die with honor. Then the humans arrived. They didn't charge heroically into the center. They hit the Scourge from the side and rear, cutting through the enemy formation like a blade. Sora's team targeted the Scourge directing the swarm, creating confusion. Hajun used breaching charges to open an escape corridor. Velkari forces, fall back through the corridor! Jiwan's voice cut through the chaos. We'll cover your retreat! The Velkari commander hesitated only a moment before ordering his warriors to withdraw. They fell back through the gap the humans had created. The humans held the line, 50 against thousands. They used every trick they knew. Grenades created temporary barriers. Concentrated fire created kill zones. Tactical retreats led the Scourge into prepared ambushes. They fought for 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours. When the last Velkari warrior was through, the humans executed a fighting withdrawal. They fell back in stages, each group covering the others, leaving mines and traps behind them. They lost the position but saved 300 lives. By nightfall, the southern sector had advanced 5 kilometers, twice as far as any other sector. Coalition forces had pushed forward 2 kilometers on average. The humans had done the impossible. Back at base camp, medics treated the wounded. 7 humans had been injured, none had died. They had also evacuated 53 wounded coalition soldiers from various species. General Velthar arrived at the human camp personally. He found Commander Jiwan sitting outside her tent, cleaning her rifle. She stood and saluted. You disobeyed orders, Velthar said. His voice was neutral, impossible to read. Yes, sir. I take full responsibility. You saved 300 Velkari warriors. We couldn't leave them. The general studied her for a long moment. How did your force achieve such success today? You were outnumbered, outgunned, in the worst position on the battlefield. Yet you advanced farther than divisions 10 times your size. Jiwan finished reassembling her rifle. We fight differently. Most coalition forces rely on individual strength and honor. That works against enemies who fight the same way. But the Scourge don't care about honor. They attack weak points. They use numbers and adaptation. So we adapted faster. Explain. We use combined arms. Snipers eliminate priority targets. Demolitions control the terrain. Infantry creates overlapping fields of fire. Medical teams keep everyone in the fight. We don't try to match the enemy's strength. We use mobility, coordination, and tactics to create advantages where none existed. Velthar was silent for several moments. On my world, warriors fight alone. Each battle is a test of individual prowess. Honor demands we face our enemies directly. That's beautiful, Jiwan said honestly, but it's also predictable. The Scourge know how you'll fight, so they prepare for it. And they don't know how humans fight? Not yet. Jiwan smiled slightly. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned every dirty trick, every tactical advantage, and every way to overcome superior force. We learned to fight smart because we had to. The general nodded slowly. Tomorrow will be harder. The Scourge will have adapted to today's tactics. So will we. After Velthar left, the other humans gathered around Jiwan. They were exhausted, but satisfied. They had proven themselves. Think they'll take us more seriously now? Hajun asked. Some will, Yuna said. Others will find excuses. We won't truly have their respect until this campaign is over. Sora cleaned her rifle methodically. That Velkari commander I helped evacuate came by earlier, thanked me personally, said he'd never seen anyone shoot like that. You saved his life 3 times, Taeyang pointed out. 4, actually, but who's counting? They shared a tired laugh. Across the camp, Coalition soldiers watched the humans with new eyes. Some looked thoughtful, others looked worried, all of them looked uncertain. High above, in her flagship orbiting Kesixthru, Queen Ixvara reviewed the battle reports. Her advisors had downplayed the human contribution, but she demanded to see the raw combat footage. She watched in silence as 50 humans fought like a single organism. She saw their tactics, their coordination, their refusal to quit even when surrounded. She saw Private Taeyang saving enemy lives while under fire. She saw Commander Jiwan leading a rescue mission that should have been suicide. They only lost 7 soldiers? She asked quietly. Yes, Your Majesty. All are expected to recover. And they evacuated over 50 wounded coalition warriors that would have otherwise died. Ixvara leaned back in her throne. For the first time in a very long time, she felt something she didn't recognize immediately. It took her a moment to identify it. Doubt. Perhaps she had been wrong about humanity. Perhaps there was more to strength than claws and armor. Queen Ixvara could not stop watching the humans. Every night she reviewed their combat footage. Every morning she demanded new reports about their activities. What had begun as cruel amusement had transformed into something else entirely. Obsession. She watched Commander Jiwan coordinate defensive positions while wounded. She watched Lieutenant Yuna predict enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. She watched Sergeant Hajun turn ordinary landscapes into deadly mazes. She watched Corporal Sora make impossible shots from impossible distances. But it was the small moments that truly shook her. In one video, Private Taeyang sat with a dying Velkari warrior. The alien's wounds were too severe to heal. He had maybe an hour left. Taeyang held his hand and sang softly in a language the Velkari couldn't understand. The warrior died peacefully, not alone. In another, Hajun shared his rations with refugee children from a bombed-out settlement. The human food wasn't compatible with their biology, so he gave them water and medical supplies instead. He spent hours teaching them a card game to take their minds off the war. In a third, Yuna stayed awake for 60 consecutive hours coordinating medical evacuations. When she finally collapsed from exhaustion, the first thing she asked when she woke was whether everyone made it out alive. These weren't the actions of simple warriors. These were the actions of people who cared deeply about others, even in the middle of hell. The campaign continued. Days turned into weeks. The Scourge adapted their tactics, becoming more aggressive and cunning. The coalition forces pushed deeper into enemy territory, paying for every meter in blood. The humans kept advancing. On the 8th day, the Scourge deployed a new weapon. Spore clouds rolled across the battlefield like toxic fog. Most coalition species breathed through membranes or gills that the spores attacked directly. Warriors collapsed, their respiratory systems melting from the inside. General Velthar ordered an immediate retreat. The losses were catastrophic. Entire battalions were wiped out in minutes. The advance stopped completely. The humans stopped retreating after 2 kilometers. Dr. Mirai Shin, the team's scientist, analyzed the spores quickly. Within 4 hours, she had designed a simple filter using salvaged materials and basic chemistry. "It's not perfect," she explained to Ji-won, "but it should provide 70% protection, enough to operate in contaminated zones for limited periods. Can we make enough for the coalition forces? If we work through the night, yes." The humans didn't sleep. They manufactured filters by the thousands, using assembly line techniques that baffled the aliens. When dawn came, they distributed them freely to every coalition unit. Velthar received his filter personally from Ji-won. "You're giving these away?" he asked. "You could have kept this technology for yourselves, used it as leverage." "We're all fighting the same enemy," Ji-won replied. "Your survival increases our chances of victory. Besides, watching people die when we can help them isn't who we are." The general accepted the filter, studying it carefully. "Humanity continues to surprise me." "We surprise ourselves sometimes," Ji-won admitted. With the filters, the advance resumed. But the Scourge had more tricks. On day 12, they launched aerial attacks from swarms of flying variants. Coalition forces had few aerial defenses. Most species relied on ground combat. Captain Nari Song led the human aerospace wing in response. She had 6 fighters against thousands of Scourge flyers. The odds were absurd. She won anyway. Nari didn't just shoot down enemies. She predicted their movements, reading the swarm's patterns like a language. She led Scourge fighters into each other, making them crash. She used the terrain, luring them into canyons where they couldn't maneuver. She turned 6 fighters into a force that routed an entire aerial army. Other coalition pilots watched in awe. They tried to replicate her tactics but couldn't. She was operating on an entirely different level of spatial awareness and tactical thinking. When the battle ended, she had lost 1 fighter but saved countless lives on the ground. She landed her damaged craft, climbed out, and immediately started helping repair other ships. Queen Ixvara watched this footage 3 times. "How?" she asked aloud. "How does one pilot defeat thousands?" Her military advisor had no answer. "The human simply knows where to be and when to be there, as if she can read the enemy's intentions." "That's not possible." "And yet we watched it happen." The Queen pulled up more files. She found reports of human medics treating wounded enemies, human engineers sharing defensive designs, human soldiers volunteering for the most dangerous missions to spare others. She found a report that particularly interested her. During a heavy bombardment, a human squad had discovered a Scourge egg chamber. Standard procedure would be to destroy it immediately. Instead, they had sealed it and marked it for coalition scientists to study later. "They preserved enemy eggs?" Ixvara asked her advisor. "Yes, Your Majesty. Commander Ji-won stated that understanding how the Scourge reproduce might lead to better ways to combat them. She prioritized knowledge over revenge." The Queen sat back in her throne. Everything she thought she knew about warfare was being challenged. The humans didn't fight with honor. They didn't seek glory. They didn't rely on individual prowess. Instead, they adapted, they cooperated, they thought ahead, they cared, and they were winning. A strategic planning session was called on day 15. The coalition's top commanders gathered to plan the final assault on the Scourge Hive Nexus. The Hive was the source of the swarm intelligence that coordinated all Scourge forces. Destroying it would cripple the enemy permanently. Dr. Mirai presented her analysis. The small human scientist stood before dozens of massive alien warriors and calmly explained the situation. "The Hive Nexus is located 5 kilometers underground," she said, displaying holographic maps. "It's protected by the bulk of the Scourge forces. Any direct assault will face massive casualties. Our models predict 70 to 80% losses even with full coalition commitment." "Acceptable," one of the alien commanders said. "Glory demands sacrifice." "There's another way," Dr. Mireille continued. "A smaller strike force using stealth and precision. We hit the Nexus directly, avoiding the main defenses. If we can place charges at key structural points, we can collapse the entire chamber. The casualties would be minimal." "Stealth?" General Velthar considered this. "The Scourge have sensors throughout their territory. A small force would be detected immediately." "Not if we use human infiltration techniques," Jiwan said, standing. "We've been studying Scourge patrol patterns for 2 weeks. We know their blind spots. We know their response times. We can get a team through." The alien commanders looked skeptical. One spoke up. "This plan requires precision and adaptability beyond normal warrior capabilities. It risks the entire campaign on a small team's success." "That's why it will work," Jiwan replied. "The Scourge expect conventional attacks. They've prepared for overwhelming force. They haven't prepared for a surgical strike." The debate continued for hours. Finally, Velthar made a decision. "We will attempt the stealth approach, but this is too important for humans alone. I will lead the assault personally with my elite troops." Before anyone could object, a hologram flickered to life. Queen Ixvara appeared, her image towering over the assembled commanders. "General Velthar, you will lead the assault," she said. "But I will accompany you." Shock rippled through the chamber. A Velkari queen had not entered personal combat in 5 centuries. It was unprecedented. "Your Majesty," Velthar began. "I have watched these humans from a distance long enough," Ixvara interrupted. "I must see with my own eyes what makes them so formidable. I must understand how creatures so fragile have achieved so much." She looked directly at Jiwan's hologram. "I will fight beside you, Commander. Perhaps then I will learn what I have been missing." Her advisors protested. Her guards objected. The other commanders called it foolish. Ixvara silenced them all with a gesture. "This is decided. We depart in 2 days. Select your best warriors, General. And Commander Jiwan, choose your finest humans. We will end this war together." The hologram vanished. The commanders sat in stunned silence. Yuna leaned close to Jiwan. "The Queen is coming with us into the most dangerous operation of the war. If she dies, the entire Velkari Empire collapses." "I know," Jiwan said quietly. "No pressure then." That night, Jiwan assembled her strike team. Yuna, Hajun, Sora, Taeyang, and 20 others. The best humanity had to offer. They gathered in the command tent to review the plan. "This is it," Jiwan said simply. "Everything we've done led to this moment. We're going to strike at the heart of the Scourge and end this war. The Queen will be watching. The galaxy will be watching. They need to see what humanity can do." "No pressure," Hajun muttered, echoing Yuna's earlier comment. A few people smiled. "We've been underestimated our whole lives," Jiwan continued. "Let's use that. Let's show them that strength isn't just physical power, it's determination. Adaptability, refusal to quit." She looked at each person. "We're going to walk into hell. Some of us might not walk back out, but we're going to do it anyway because that's what humans do. We face the impossible and make it possible." Taeyang raised his hand. "Commander, why is the Queen really coming?" Jiwan considered the question. "Because she's starting to doubt everything she thought she knew about warfare. And maybe, just maybe, she wants to understand us." "Think we can teach an ancient alien queen new tricks?" Sora asked. "We're about to find out." The descent into the Scourge territory felt like entering the throat of some vast beast. The strike team moved through tunnels that pulsed with organic growth. The walls breathed. The floor squelched beneath their boots. Everywhere, the smell of decay and alien biology filled the recycled air. Queen Ixvara walked among the humans, her elite crimson blades surrounding her. She had expected to lead this mission, to show these fragile creatures how true warriors operated. Instead, she found herself following Commander Jiwan's directions, adapting to human tactics she barely understood. The team numbered 80, 30 humans, 50 Velkari warriors, against an entire hive. Lieutenant Yuna navigated using three-dimensional maps updated in real time. Next tunnel branches in 50 meters. Scourge patrol passes through every 8 minutes. We have a 3-minute window. The team moved in absolute silence. The Velkari had never learned to move quietly. They had never needed to. The humans taught them in whispers, showing hand signals and careful footwork. The massive warriors tried their best, following the example of soldiers half their size. They reached the first checkpoint without detection. Sergeant Hajun placed sensor jammers that would mask their presence temporarily. The technology was crude, but effective. "How much farther?" Velthar asked quietly. 3 kilometers down, 2 kilometers lateral, Yuna replied. "We're making good time." They encountered their first Scourge patrol 90 minutes in. 12 warriors rounded a corner, mandibles clicking in communication. The strike team had nowhere to hide. Corporal Sora fired first. Her silenced rifle dropped 2 Scourge before they could react. The humans and Velkari moved together, eliminating the patrol in seconds. Fast, brutal, efficient. Taeyang checked the bodies. They didn't have time to send an alert. "We're still undetected." They continued deeper. The tunnels grew larger, more elaborate. They passed chambers filled with Scourge eggs, nurseries where young grew. Ixvara expected the humans to destroy everything. Instead, they marked locations and kept moving. "Why spare them?" she asked Jiwan. "Because our mission is the Nexus," Jiwan replied. "Destroying eggs alerts the hive. We stay focused on the objective." "That's not how my warriors fight. We destroy all enemies we encounter." "I know. That's why you've been fighting the Scourge for years without winning. You fight predictably." Ixvara had no response to that. They reached the hive nexus chamber after 4 hours. The entrance was a massive organic valve that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Beyond it lay the heart of the Scourge intelligence. And guarding it was an army. Thousands of Scourge warriors filled the chamber. The hive nexus itself pulsed in the center, a massive biological computer the size of a building, connected to the entire swarm through neural pathways. "We'll never fight through that," Velthar said quietly. "We don't have to fight all of them," Dr. Mire said. She had come with the strike team, carrying demolition charges. "We just need to reach the nexus long enough to plant charges." "How?" The humans looked at each other. They had planned for this scenario. "We create a distraction," Jiwan said. "Half the team draws their attention. The other half plants charges and gets out." "That's suicide for whoever creates the distraction," Ixvara said. "Only if they stay to fight," Hajun replied. "We fight, fall back, fight again. Keep them chasing us while the demo team works." The Velkari warriors looked skeptical. Running from battle was shameful. Ixvara saw their expressions and understood their hesitation. She had felt the same way her entire life, but she had learned something in the past weeks. Sometimes survival required setting aside pride. "I will lead the distraction team," she announced. Her guards protested immediately. Velthar stepped forward. "Your Majesty, you cannot—" "I can and will," Ixvara interrupted. "I have watched humans fight with tactics I don't fully understand. Now I will use those tactics myself. Commander Jiwon, what do I need to do?" Jiwon studied the queen for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly. Stay alive. Move fast. Don't try to kill everything. Just keep them busy. They divided the teams. Ixvara, Velthar, and 20 Velkari would create the distraction. Jiwan, Dr. Mire, Hajun, and 15 humans would plant the charges. The remaining forces would secure the escape route. Yuna coordinated timing. The distraction team goes in first. Make noise. Be obvious. When the Scourge commit to pursuing you, the demo team enters. Charges need 4 minutes to set up properly. Can you give us 4 minutes? We'll give you 10, Ixvara said. The distraction team charged through the entrance. Ixvara led from the front, her voice raised in a battle cry that echoed through the chamber. The Scourge responded exactly as predicted, swarming toward the intruders. For the first time in her life, Ixvara fought to escape rather than to win. She struck at enemies and moved on. She used the terrain to slow pursuers. She led the Scourge on a chase through side tunnels, keeping them away from the Nexus. It felt wrong. Every instinct screamed at her to stand and fight. But she remembered watching Taeyang fight Krenox. Sometimes the smart thing wasn't the honorable thing. Meanwhile, Jiwan's team reached the Nexus. The massive organic structure pulsed with neural activity. Dr. Mire worked quickly, placing shaped charges at structural weak points. 2 minutes, she called out. Scourge defenders surrounded them. Not the thousands outside, but enough to be dangerous. The humans formed a defensive perimeter. Sora dropped targets with precision. Taeyang fired while simultaneously treating a wounded soldier. Hajun threw grenades that kept the enemy at bay. Jiwan fought in the center, protecting Dr. Mire while she worked. A Scourge warrior broke through the line, heading straight for the scientist. Jiwan intercepted it, her blade finding the creature's weak points. She moved with desperate efficiency, every action calculated to preserve her strength. 1 minute, Dr. Mire announced, her hands steady despite the chaos. Outside, Ixavara's team was tiring. The Velkari were strong, but even they had limits. The Scourge were infinite. They kept coming, wave after wave. "Fall back!" Velthar shouted. "We need to retreat." "Not yet," Ixvara replied. She checked her internal chronometer. 3 minutes, 40 seconds. Almost there. "We hold." A Scourge the size of a transport vehicle emerged from a side tunnel. It was unlike anything they had seen, a Guardian variant, bred specifically to protect the Nexus. Its armor was thick enough to deflect most weapons. It headed straight for the chamber entrance, straight for Dr. Mire's team. Ixvara made a decision. She didn't think. She didn't calculate. She just acted. She charged the Guardian alone. Her crimson blades shouted in alarm, but she was already moving. She struck the creature with everything she had, her claws raking across its armor. It barely noticed. A massive appendage swung at her, faster than something that size should move. The blow caught her across the chest, sending her flying into a wall. Pain exploded through her body, ribs cracked, internal injuries, serious damage. The Guardian moved toward the chamber entrance, toward the humans. Then Jiwan was there. The human commander appeared between the Guardian and the entrance, her weapon firing in controlled bursts. The shots targeted the creature's joints, its eyes, anywhere that looked vulnerable. "Demo team, 30 seconds, Jiwan shouted. "Get ready to run!" The Guardian focused on this new annoyance. It attacked with crushing force. Jiwan evaded, her smaller size and speed keeping her alive. She wasn't trying to kill it, just distract it. Behind her, Dr. Mire placed the final charge. "Charges set! Everyone out!" The teams retreated. The Velkari carried their wounded. The humans covered the withdrawal with disciplined fire. Ixvara stumbled to her feet, one arm hanging useless, and ran. Jiwan was the last to leave. She fired at the Guardian until her weapon ran dry, then turned and sprinted. The creature followed, gaining ground. Hajun waited at the tunnel entrance with a detonator. "Come on, Commander! Move!" Jiwan dove through the entrance. Hajun triggered the charges. The explosion was massive. The Nexus chamber collapsed in on itself, crushing the Guardian and destroying the biological computer. Neural connections severed all at once. Throughout the hive, Scourge warriors suddenly stopped moving. Without the Nexus coordinating them, they became simple animals, dangerous but no longer organized. The strike team didn't stop running until they reached the surface. Dawn was breaking over Keswick's 4. Behind them, the ground shook as underground chambers collapsed. The hive was dying. Coalition forces waited at the rally point. When they saw the strike team emerge, battered but alive, cheers erupted. The war was won. Medics rushed forward. Ixvara waved them toward the wounded first. She sat heavily on a rock, her breathing labored. Taiyang approached with medical supplies. "Your Majesty, you need treatment," he said gently. "See to the others first." "Already done. You're the worst injured. Please let me help." She allowed him to examine her injuries. His hands were quick and professional, applying battlefield medicine with practiced ease. "You saved my life," Ixvara said quietly. "When the Guardian attacked, Commander Jiwan could have run. She chose to fight." "That's what humans do," Taeyang replied. "We protect each other, even when it's dangerous." The Queen watched Jiwan across the staging area. The commander was checking on every single member of the strike team, making sure they had what they needed. No glory-seeking, no boasting, just quiet care for her people. "I was wrong," Ixvara said. "About everything." 3 weeks later, aboard the flagship Eternity's Fang, Queen Ixvara hosted a formal ceremony. The throne room was filled with coalition representatives, military commanders, and her entire court. Jiwan stood before the throne with her team. They wore clean uniforms, but couldn't hide the evidence of hard fighting. Scars, healed injuries, the weariness in their eyes. Ixvara spoke, her voice strong despite the bandages still wrapped around her torso. "I summoned humanity to prove themselves worthy of joining the coalition. I expected them to fail. I mocked their weakness. I questioned their courage." She paused. "I was a fool." She descended from her throne and approached Jiwan directly. "Humanity doesn't need fangs or claws or armored skin. You have something far more valuable. You have adaptability, creativity. The refusal to surrender even when victory seems impossible. You fight not for glory but for each other." She removed her royal seal, a crystal that represented her personal honor and authority. She placed it in Jiwan's hands. "Humanity is welcomed into the coalition with full honors. You have proven yourselves not just worthy but essential. The galaxy needs what you offer." The throne room erupted in cheers. Not polite acknowledgement, but genuine celebration. Warriors who had fought beside the humans shouted approval. Even the Crimson Blades, who had initially mocked humanity, raised their voices in support. Later, in a private moment, Ixvara asked Jiwan, "How does your species remain so strong when you're so fragile?" Jiwan smiled. "Because we know we're fragile. Every human grows up knowing we can die easily. We have no natural armor, no great strength, so we learn to protect each other, to fight smart, to never give up. Our weakness became our greatest strength." Ixvara nodded slowly. "Perhaps the galaxy has much to learn from humanity." "And we have much to learn from you," Jiwan replied. "That's what allies do. We learn from each other." As the human ships prepared to return to Earth, Ixvara watched from her throne. She had expected to witness humanity's failure. Instead, she had witnessed something far more remarkable. She had witnessed humanity's triumph, not despite their limitations, but because they had learned to overcome them through cooperation, ingenuity, and sheer determination. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. More importantly, Ixvara herself had learned that true strength came in many forms. Sometimes the smallest warriors cast the longest shadows, and humanity, those fragile, persistent, impossibly brave creatures, had just begun to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of.